Today I'm going to be sharing with you about the thread that touches the deepest part of me. Talmidah. Talmidah is the Hebrew word for a female disciple. Now, we're going to start with those pink pens. Did everybody get one? Yep. And you can turn to page 28 in your notebooks. It's titled Talmidah. At the top of your page with your pink pen, would you jot down the names of two women who you are close to? I'd like the first one to be someone from your family, and the second one to be someone from your ministry. Real quick at the top of your page. Now, it only takes a glance at Jesus' life to see how counterculturally he treated women, right? You know this. He converses with women. He stops for women. He touches women. He feels for women. He heals women outside and in. This was not how Jesus was supposed to relate to women. Josephus wrote in the same century, "A woman is inferior to a man in all respects." The Mishnah states, "He who talks too much with women brings evil upon himself and neglects the study of the Torah." And Ben Sirach, an influential scribe who significantly shaped Jewish thought just before Jesus, persuaded this: "Sin began with a woman, and thanks to her, we all must die." Women give rise to shame and reproach. Do not put yourself in a woman's hands, or she may dominate you completely. But Jesus loved and valued women in a way that was completely unexpected. His heart was different. The question for this morning goes, for me, a little bit further even than that. Because our question for this morning is, was it in Jesus' heart to make space for women to be present or to be participant? Did Jesus disciple, train, and send out women? It's a valid question, you know, because when it came time for Jesus to choose his leader trainees, he did it very carefully. He went up to the mountain and he prayed all night, conversing with the Father. When he came down from the mountain, Luke describes a large crowd of disciples. And Jesus chooses 12 of them. And those 12 are very different. Different ages, different professions, certainly different personalities. But those 12 are all men. They're all men. They're all men. Father, is that your strategy to win the world? I mean, is this a man's movement? Did you invite women to kind of be around but never invite them to participate? Why? Do you not think that I can do it? Do you not think that I want to do it? Because it's all I want to do with my whole life. My heart cries out like Jeremiah's, who said, "Your word is like a fire in my bones. Keep it in." I can't. All I want to do is share about you. I've been teaching women for years how to make disciples. Have I been doing the wrong thing? All I want to do is follow your son's life. I just want to do exactly what he does. So you tell me now, if he didn't do it, I'll bow out. Or maybe you want to show me something that I'm missing. As you can imagine, for me, that was the beginning of a very personal, and to be honest, a very scary conversation with the Father. It also started to be a conversation with my coworkers. And as we conversed, the Lord told us, keep your eyes on the sun. So I kept reading. And I got a big, sparkly, pink pen. And I decided anytime I see a sign of Talmidah in the movement, I'm going to mark it in pink. It's very interesting because Jesus that day came down from the mountainside with his 12, and he started a leadership training time. It's before he sends them out. So it gives us this idea that these guys are still in training, that there are still some key principles that they need to learn in order to really do this multiplication phase. Quickly into that special training time, we come to Luke 8, 1-3, that says this: Jesus traveled around from one town and village to another, proclaiming the good news of the kingdom of God. The 12 were with him, and also some women, marked in pink, who had been cured of evil spirits and diseases. Mary from Magdala, marked in pink, from whom 7 demons had come out. Joanna, underlined in pink, the wife of Chuza, the manager of Herod's household. Susanna, marked in pink, and many others, really marked in pink. These women were helping support them out of their means. Well, in looking at this new color in my Bible, I started to ask, were these women part of that large crowd of disciples that Luke just talked about? Looks like Jesus said, come and see by casting, by healing them. But how did they decide to stay? When did these women realize that there was space for them? And when Jesus was teaching, where were they? Because, man, I know where I would have been, right up there next to him. And why are there 3 names mentioned? Man, so many key characters in Jesus' life who never get their name in the text. The little boy who brought his fish and his bread, the woman at the well. But these 3 women get their name there. Why is that? Were they the wealthiest? Were they the prettiest? Or could have they been the leader trainees for the women? It was then that I realized that I needed to get this picture out of my head of these women over on the sidelines cooking over the campfires, especially since we know from this morning Jesus did that too, right? And even sent his men to prepare the Passover meal. So maybe these women aren't all out washing all the men's underwear and prayer shawls and things, because the text specifically says the women traveled around with Jesus. Well, men weren't supposed to have women following them around. Men were supposed to be like their fathers, who were like their grandfathers, who were instructed to, I quote, never sit down with a woman, never to trust a woman, and to have a silent wife in a well-run house. I don't think it was one of the 12 who decided to have the women following them around. It seems to me like they were invited by the rabbi himself. When a Jewish rabbi looks at you and says, follow me, that is a clear invitation into a discipleship relationship. It's an invitation to be like him. We also know that when these women accepted this invitation, that they were rejected by their families. They carried heavy stigmas. And above all, they gave up everything. You know what that sounds a lot like? Talmidah. We also know from Mary, the sister of Martha, who sat at Jesus' feet in a rabbinical exchange, that Jesus' heart was to have women disciples. True disciples, you know, the ones that go out and make disciples too. These women, so from then on, I decided with my marker, from Luke 8 on chronologically, I'm going to start marking in pink the term disciples. Because although it's a gender-neutral term, I'd realized that I had always read the term disciples as male disciples. But it's not. It's Mary, it's Joanna, it's Susanna, and it's many others. And they are there in the middle of a very strategic leadership training. They are being taught the secrets of the kingdom. They are being taught how to sow the word. And you know how Jesus loved to train in excursions. We saw in Mark 4 that there were other boats with Jesus. Were women in the other boats? And when the 12 were sent out, were the women filled with joy because they knew their time would come? Were they in the 72? Because by the time this phase ends and Jesus is resurrected, it becomes really clear that Jesus had women disciples. I want to show you just one example of that. You've got a little piece of paper that says Luke 24, 1 and on. Let's go there quickly. I'm just going to give you one example because you will have so much more fun finding the other ones, any other ones on your own. Luke 24, verse 1 says, on the first day of the week, the women, marked in pink, took spices they had prepared and went to the tomb. Let's skip down to verse 6 and 7. The angels come and say, he is not here, he is risen. Remember how he told you, underlined in pink, while he was still with you in Galilee, that the Son of Man must be delivered, crucified, raised again. The angels reference what Jesus was talking about 6 months earlier, recorded in Mark 9. So let's go to Mark 9, the second passage on your paper, and let's ask, who was he talking to? You all will recognize this as Jesus' second prediction. Mark 9:30 to 31. They left that place and passed through Galilee. Jesus did not want anyone to know they were there because he was teaching his disciples, underlined in pink. And he said to them, the Son of Man is going to be betrayed, killed, and raised again. Do you see how the women are his disciples? Do you see how they are retreating with Jesus? How they are privy to his most vulnerable moments, how they are let into his heart, and they are let into his plan. Have you maybe overlooked them like I have? Maybe the women weren't the first few disciples called, but I love that Mary, mother of Jesus, was the first person on earth that the Father decided to tell about his son. Quickly afterwards, Elizabeth is the first human ever to confess with her mouth that Jesus is Lord. Maybe the women weren't the first 12 sent out, but the women at the tomb were the first sent out with the whole gospel. So I am learning that Jesus modeled that to win the world, which is half men and half women, that we need to work together to be discipled, trained, and sent out. That's what his movement looks like. Remember how Jesus, at the end of his life, prayed for unity? I wonder how much of his heart's cry was for his Talmid men and his Talmidah women to work together as a team in holy and healthy relationships. I know, men, that it can be easier to work without us. I know. Women, isn't it true that it can be easier to work without them? But working apart is not the son's story. Seems to me that our author God, who was the writer of this whole story, had a pink pen in his hand as he wrote. And he passed that pen on to his son. And his son passes that pen on to us. I want to give you a pink pen this morning. I want to give it to you as a symbol. And I also want to give you each one as this invitation. Would you pick up a pink pen and start marking in your Bibles where you might see signs of Talmidah in the movement? Let's conclude by going to those two names you jotted down at the top of your page. Look at the name of the first woman. The first woman you jotted down is someone is in your family. So whether she's your wife, your daughter, or your mother, I know that you, and men especially, have a deep desire to provide for her. Maybe a great question for this morning is this: how am I providing for her to be a disciple and to make a disciple? You in this room, in their lives, have a front row opportunity to provide space for her to be at Jesus' feet as a disciple. In my house, that's Lisandro, my husband, grabbing our small kids, putting them in the car, going on some adventure so that I can just be alone, so that I can grab the word and plop down at his feet and listen and do what I most love doing. That's us right now. I don't know what stage of life you are in, but I do know that what she most needs is to be close to Jesus. And also, mom, sister, husband, you provide what I feel like is the most trusted voice to encourage her to be a disciple maker. Women are incredible disciple makers. So look at that name and let me ask this question. Do you believe that she is just as much part of the Everyday Commission as you are? Then remind her of that and provide for her everything she needs to participate, to obey. Let's go to the second name. She's someone in your ministry. She represents your Marys, your Susannas, your Joannas. Another great question for today is this: how am I helping her participate as a co-worker in the movement? I mean, if you asked her today if she feels present or if she feels like a participant, what would she say? Years ago, Mark Edwards extended a verbal invitation to me to participate in Jesus' movement. He gave me the privileges and the responsibilities of a co-laborer. That space in the movement is a reminder that I was made for this too. Have you given her a verbal invitation to be part of Jesus' movement? This is Jesus' heart. It's for us to work together, men and women in his movement. So with pink pens in hand, let's commit to continuing to look at the Son's life. And if we find that Jesus discipled, trained, and sent out women, then let's do that too. Father, I just want to thank you so much this morning for this value in GYI. Thank you for bringing us to Magdala today. Would you guide us as we continue to converse about men and women as co-workers winning the world? We want the whole world to know you. So will you help us when it gets sticky? And will you help us when it gets scary? Will you help us keep our eyes on your Son? Amen.